Eleanor Williams. Untold Stories from the West. This is it, I thought to myself as Charlotte and I were riding towards Strawberry. Eddie, Cynthia, and Elizabeth had left earlier to go snatch a wagon. I hoped it went well on their end. Hey, I said to Charlotte. We'd hardly spoken to each other this morning. I'm sorry about last night. My past is just something I had to talk about. I've never really taken the time to deal with it before. So running away is what I usually do when it comes up in a conversation or even in my thoughts. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? She looked at me and said, I get it. You don't need to explain yourself to me. I just don't know when to stop with all the questions sometimes. It's a habit of mine. So I figured I'd stop asking them when we're alone today. Even though I can't help but I feel like I want to know everything about you. Eleanor Williams, I've grown to care about you a lot, and I hope in some way we can keep in touch, even after the job is done. She paused for a moment and then continued. You know, just now when you spoke about running away? Well, no one can run forever. Eventually your past catches up with you somehow, in life or in your mind. I learned that very early on. But don't worry, I'll be more quiet today. I rode really close to her and pumped her shoulder. Charlotte Duval, buttoning her lips. Well, I never thought I'd see that day. Hey, we can send each other letters if you'd like. I promise to write you every month. That's true though, what you said. No matter how hard you try, you're not fast enough to outrun your memories. Charlotte laughed. I'm not going to lie, it was hard at first, she said. But even I still have times when my past takes hold of me somehow and won't let go. But I keep on trying, day by day. Well, girl, I don't want you to be quiet. I like the way you are, I said, smiling. Once we're done with this job, and before we all go our separate ways, I'll tell you all about my childhood, I promise. I looked over and noticed she had turned her face to the other side for a bit. She always does that whenever she gets nervous and blushes. I'll definitely keep that in my mind, she said excitedly. I'm expecting a lot of questions, I choked. Oh, you know I'll have them, she laughed. Speaking of after this robbery, have you ever been to the north, where there's snow? I always wanted to see it. I grew up on the dry and dusty plains of New Austin, as you know. A land covered in snow seems so magical to me. I've only ever seen pictures in some books I've read. I've been to Lake Isabella once, I told her. I was going after some bounty that had been last seen in the area there in some cabin. But I gotta tell you, the place was beautiful. Snow-covered mountains rising up to the skies on both sides. The snow on the shores gives off a slight sparkle in the sunlight. Sheets of ice covering most of the lake, so thick you could actually ride your horse over them. The area was a sight to see. Please, please, Eleanor, tell me we can go there, she begged. Or do you want to head off to your trip to California almost right away? I'm not leaving until I've seen the snow. And I was also thinking that I'd like to visit Armadillo one last time. I want to say a proper goodbye to all the people I've grown to know over the years there. And I've got to say a goodbye to all the sheep I've taken care of for so long. You know how much I love them. I won't be that much in a hurry, I assured her. I can take you there. It'll be a little adventure. But we need to buy you some warmer clothes because your ass would freeze up there. I laughed as I squeezed my calves against Sora. Here! A massive smile appeared on Charlotte's face. Yes! Oh, I can't wait! Thinking about Charlotte and I riding off together after the job gave me a warm feeling in my chest. The thought of it made me feel kind of happy. Who knows? Maybe California can wait a bit longer. I mean, it'll always be there waiting for me. Charlotte had started entering my thoughts a lot more these past few weeks. I really liked her and had grown to care about her very much. I'm so glad she had decided to come with me and leave Armadillo. Gosh, it makes me feel so good seeing her happy. But any thoughts of Charlotte I seem to have always ended up getting drowned out by thinking about this dangerous job we had looming over our heads. I just can't let her down. I can't let any of them down. After about an hour, we arrived just outside of Strawberry and waited. It was 2 hours after sunset, so it was already getting dark. After a little while, I could hear an empty wagon rattling up the road behind us. I heard a few horses' hooves thudding on the dirt path as well. Eddie and the others were on time, it seemed. "Any trouble?" I asked them.
"None whatsoever, child," said Grandpa. "We had Cynthia wait on the road pretending to be in pain. First sucker with the wagon that came out rolling down the road. Stopped to see if your poor mother was all right. Then little Miss Smarty Mouth came out of the bushes wearing her bandana and stuck a gun in his face. I came out from behind and punked him over the head. Knocked the poor sap out cold. We dumped him and his supplies in the bushes. He'll wake up with a thumbing headache, but we're all good here, ready to go when you are, child."
"Wasn't nothing," said Elizabeth, but Eddie here was shaking like a leaf. Couldn't tell if it was because he was nervous or because he's just old as fuck. Elizabeth laughed out loud.
"I've been chugging wagons since you were sucking your mama's titty," retorted Grandpa. "Maybe if she had smacked some sense into you, you'd have learned to respect your elders more."
"Quiet, you two," I said forcefully. "Now, Charlotte, would you ride on in and have a quick look around the place and tell us what's what?" "Sure," she said. Charlotte rode on ahead into Strawberry. She came back not long after and told us the town streets looked empty and that most folks seemed to be already indoors, which was perfect for us. "Okay, we'll head off now," I said. "Good luck." Charlotte and I rode around the outside of Strawberry and hitched our horses on the top of the hill that overlooked where the dynamite was stashed. We crouched close together and watched as Mama drove the wagon into town, followed closely by Grandpa and Elizabeth on their horses, and Mama's horse behind them. As Cynthia backed the wagon up beside the hotel, Eddie and Elizabeth hitched their horses in front of the now closed general store. Cynthia got off and stood watch just in front of the hotel. Grandpa, Eddie, and Elizabeth walked slowly to the back of the wagon. Eddie looked up in our direction, and I gave him a wave to let him know the coast was clear and to get started. "Do you think someone will notice them?" Charlotte whispered. "Mom, Cynthia will keep a lookout for any danger," I said. "I know last night I was worried," whispered Charlotte, "but this is so exciting. I've never done anything like this before. I feel like we're like outlaws, and soon the whole state will be after us. Let's not lose our focus now, Charlotte," I told her. Charlotte suddenly lost her balance. She fell against me and the impact made me fall over too. I was on my back, and the loss of balance had made it so Charlotte had suddenly found herself on the top of me. We looked into each other's eyes, and a weird feeling filled my stomach. It was warm and whimsical. It made me giddy. A tingling sensation instantly started in my lower region, a feeling I'd only felt once before in my life. I could feel Charlotte's breath on my skin. She had a faint smell of sweet raspberries. All I wanted to do at that moment was to kiss her plump lips. I wanted to wrap my arms around her and never let go. The excitement was almost overwhelming. Just after I'd previously waited for them to get started, Eddie had taken off a nailed-together wooden board that were covering the hole that led to the crawl space underneath the hotel, the place where the crates that were filled with stolen U.S. Army dynamite were stashed.
"Ladies first,"
Eddie told Elizabeth.
"If you even are one, that is,"
he chuckled to himself. Elizabeth had given Eddie a look that probably meant she was picturing what he'd look like dead in the ditch someplace. "If you think I'm going inside that crawl space, then you got another thing coming, old man. You go. Just put a crate outside and I'll load them into the wagon."
"You sure you got the muscles for it, girlie?" he asked.
"Please," she said chokingly. "I could probably lift you over my head, you old bag of bones." "What's taking you so long?" Cynthia whispered loudly. "Pa, go in there so we can get out of here."
All right, I'm going,"
he mumbled. As Grandpa Eddie bent over and was crawling into a small hole at the side of under the hotel, Elizabeth had given his ass a little push with the sole of her boot. Grandpa fell forward flat on his stomach. She giggled.
"God damn you, devil woman," he said.
Meanwhile, just above them, after a short pause, Charlotte quickly started to get up. I'm sorry, Eleanor," she said nervously. I lost my balance and I fell and... Don't worry, are you all right?" I asked as I got up to my feet. "Did you hurt yourself?" "No, I'm all right," she smiled. "What about you?" I could hear the crates being loaded onto the wagon down below us. I'm okay, I answered quietly. We must stay focused. Can you keep an eye on the left side? I'll keep looking out for the west entrance. Yes, of course, she answered quickly. I don't know if she felt the same way, but I could never ask. I thought to myself as I cleansed her. What if I drove her further away from me? Women would never be able to be together in such a world. We'd be shunned. Maybe it's better that I suppress my feelings. It might ruin everything between us anyway.
This is the second last crate,
said Grandpa as he lifted the crate just outside the crawl space.
There appears to be some Molotovs too. Could come handy for something down the line, you never know.
Grandpa's hat had fallen off near the entrance to the crawl space. The top of Grandpa's head was nearly completely bald, except for a few hairs that were hanging on for dear life. You're right. One could come in handy. To burn the rest of your hair off, Elizabeth said jokingly. You never know. Could be an improvement.
Hey, Eddie said. You don't know what I've been through. My scalp.
Shh, somebody's coming, interrupted Cynthia. She peeked around the corner and motioned for them to stay down and hide. Eddie quickly went back into the crawl space and Elizabeth hid behind the wagon.
Hey, pretty. What you doing out here at this hour?
A drunken older man asked. Had to come outside and get some fresh air, she answered.
You wanna come back to my place for another drink? He asked. I got a bottle of fine Scotch whiskey that needs finishing.
He was holding a bottle, and his body was swaying from side to side. Is that so? Cynthia asked while looking around the area.
What you doing? Waiting for someone?
The man slurred.
Are you a prostitute or something? Hey, what's that behind that wagon back there?
The man looked like he was about to fall over right in front of her. Cynthia was silent for a little while and then said, That's nothing, and as a matter of fact I am one, but I prefer to be calling a working lady.
A working lady?
The drunk man laughed.
Well, how about you give me some of that sweet cunt of yours?
I'm waiting for someone already, Cynthia said. Besides, I wouldn't sleep with the man who looks like a hippopotamus. So move along, or you'll find your jingling Johnny floating near the bottom of that whiskey bottle of yours. The man looked at the bottle, then looked at Cynthia and said,
Hippo what? You crazy bitch.
That's a lady to you, sir, Mama said. Now back off. The man turned and started stumbling off down the street singing some drunken tune. When he disappeared around the corner, Elizabeth and Eddie went back to work. Oh, that was close, Charlotte said. Do you think he saw what they all was doing? That man couldn't see a grizzly bear if he was standing in front of him breathing down his neck, I said. Didn't you see him trying to walk? The old sod was swinging from side to side and stumbling all over the place. I saw people walking like that back in Armadillo. I just don't understand why they have to walk like they have 2 pounds of whoopsie in their pants, Charlotte innocently said. I wanted to laugh, but I had to hold it in. Charlotte is way too innocent for this world. I sure hope it doesn't change her too much. Some folks just don't know when to stop drinking, I told her. Hey, looks like they're done now, Charlotte said as she pointed in Eddie's and Elizabeth's direction.
This is the last one,
Grandpa said as he put down the crate and came out of the crawl space, putting his hat back on. His white suit was covered in dirt from head to boot. Elizabeth looked him up and down and said, I always knew you were a dirty old man. She grinned and lifted the last crate onto the wagon. Along with the dynamite, this crate also had a couple detonators in it. Grandpa patted his suit cleaner.
At least you can see I was putting in work, he said. Why, you look like you'd probably start to cry if you got your pretty little face dirty.
He walked past her and blew the dust from his hat in her face.
That's for kicking me in my behind when I was going on at the hotel,
Grandpa said. Elizabeth was fuming with anger after that. You can always see from her face when she wants to curse someone to the deepest corner of hell. You watch yourself, she said angrily, or I'll kick more than that bony old ass of yours. You folks ready? I asked. All 3 of them got a fright, and Cynthia pointed her pistol at me. Whoa, Mama, it's just me, I said. Eleanor, I'm so sorry, she said, relieved. But you startled me. Nearly gave your poor mother a heart attack. Didn't hear you coming. That was a quick draw, though, I said, surprisingly. I'm amazed. Elizabeth wiped her face clean from the dust that Grandpa had blown in her face. Half of that dust was probably from your decaying bones, you decrepit old bastard, Elizabeth quipped. But yeah, we're all done here. Let's get moving. Alright, let's ride near the Dakota River and we'll split up there, I said. Elizabeth hopped onto the wagon and grabbed the reins. I got off Sora and sat right beside her. Cynthia, mount up and ride out front. Eddie, get on Rita, and you and Charlotte can ride behind us. Stay close and make sure Sora and Luna come with you. Okay, let's get the fuck out of this place. Here, Elizabeth said as she slapped the reins across the wagon horse's back. The gang and I slowly headed down the pumpy main road of Strawberry and out of the front gate. Hopefully for the last time. Goddamn, I was glad to be leaving that place. I'm not going to lie, I was excited. It had been a long time since I had done a robbery, although I'd done many, but this time felt different though. I had family involved whom I loved dearly. I also had Charlotte, whom I'd really grown to care about. I also was beginning to care about Elizabeth, even though she was often cold. But I felt like there was a friendship growing between the two of us over the short time we'd spent together so far. She seemed like she was really beginning to trust me, although I wasn't too sure of that yet. As we rolled over the tracks at Rick's station, the upcoming robbery was the only thing on my mind. Have I thought of everything? I questioned myself. What if something unexpected happens? Can we deal with it? What if one of the guards or town folks tries to be a hero? We'll just have to kill them, I thought. Charlotte wouldn't like that, but she knows this is dangerous, and we might have to get our hands dirty. Oh, Charlotte, I thought, as I pictured her pretty face and her sunshine smile lighting up when she eventually sees Lake Isabel with me after we finished the job. There was another wagon waiting that Grandpa had gotten for him and Mama, where they collected some of the dynamite and cords. They didn't need Molotovs, so they stayed in our wagon. I found it somewhat strange whenever I thought about after the job these days. My thoughts seemed to be no longer traveling to the beaches of California. They seemed to be headed for the snow and seeing a beautiful icy lake with a beautiful girl by my side. What's happening to me? I thought as that rare feeling in my stomach started to creep in. I brushed it off. It's just nerves, I said to myself as we were getting closer to the river. I'll do whatever it takes to keep everyone safe and to make sure this job goes well, although I would prefer it if no one died during this robbery. I'll kill whoever I need to kill to make this job a success. If anyone gets on our way of doing that, they'll eat lead. Alright everyone, this is where Eddie and Cynthia continued their way to the bridge. The rest of us will stay on the shore over there, I said as I pointed out in the direction of the beautiful golden sand. I'll see you later, child, yelled Grandpa as they were driving off with Cynthia. Eleanor, please be safe, Mother shouted immediately after this. And you too as well, she continued. I will, I told both of them. You're the ones who should be careful, I whispered to myself. We got to the beach, and Elizabeth stopped the wagon, and as she was climbing down, I asked her, Did you send Clint that telegram? Yes, I took care of that before we all left camp, she said. I paid extra to get the same day delivery. He'll find us, I'm sure. That's good, I said looking around, but the area was empty, not a soul in sight. That worried me a little. Elizabeth looked around and stated, Or maybe that bastard got cold feet right before the job. If he doesn't come, we must go without him, I said as I started walking towards Charlotte, who was tying Luna, Dakota, and Sora to the trees. I don't like the idea of Charlotte being outside, alone waiting for us, because there needs to be two inside, and I trust Elizabeth's weapon skills more, but having Charlotte all alone would be risky, I thought to myself. I really hope Clint comes. The horses are getting along very well, Charlotte said while petting Dakota. Indeed they do. They've learned to like each other. I smiled and gave Sora the apple I had taken from the saddlebag. Here you go, girl. Eat this. Sora ate the apple contentedly and then nodded her head a few times. It was always so cute when she did that. What's the plan? Elizabeth asked when she got to us. Are we going to play tag? She spread her arms. I gave Sora a quick brush and then turned to look at Elizabeth, who was now behind me looking after Luna. In a way she was a lot like Lucinda, not very talkative and full of anger. Or so it seemed. I am interested in her life story. I wonder if she would ever be ready to tell about herself, I thought to myself. The plan is to wait until morning. You can think about what to do in that time. Could you put a few blankets under the wagon? We'll sleep under it tonight. I nodded in the direction of the wagon. Sleep under the wagon? I've never done that. I'm experiencing new things all the time here, Charlotte said, excitedly clapping her hands together. Oh, you're really inexperienced. Elizabeth looked at Charlotte with disdain. Yes, I can put the blankets on, but I sleep on the side as much as possible. She stated this as she started walking back towards the wagon. Charlotte gave me a look that I knew she wanted to ask me something. Eleanor, would you like to come for a walk with me? She looked really shy behind Dakota. I think Elizabeth can handle this on her own. Sure, I replied. If Clint comes, tell him we're close. I looked at Elizabeth. She looked at me from the side of the wagon with the blanket in her hands and said, Yes, ma'am. Elizabeth spread a blanket under the wagon, got on it to lie on her stomach, and took a sketchbook from her bag. She started to draw. I should have guessed that she would just put a blanket for herself. I didn't even know she drew. Maybe later today I could ask if I could see some of her drawings if she wants to show them. I was nervous as to why Charlotte wanted to go for a walk. Maybe she was afraid to go alone and wanted me along to see the scenery. But knowing her, she will have one or two questions. I can't believe how green it is here, Charlotte said as we walked some way along the road in the southerly direction. It's the opposite of New Austin. The air here is so fresh. Oh, look, Eleanor! There's deer! She pointed towards the shore. I looked towards the deer and smiled. You're going to see a lot of them around here. She let out a long sigh as she looked towards the deer and began to fidget her fingers again. Charlotte, I asked, trying to make eye contact with her. What is it? I can see you're nervous. If you want to ask me something, just ask. She looked down and said, I've been thinking, what if Lucinda comes back for the gold? I know you say you would deal with her, but I'm worried about you. You say she's crazy. She kept fidgeting with her fingers. I went in front of her, grabbed her hands, and tried to calm her down. Well, she shouldn't have gone anywhere in the first place. She knows I knew about the plan. If she was here now, she'd get her share. But she's not. I'm tired of waiting and trying to find her, I told her. Charlotte continued to stare at the crowd. Are you trying to search the crowd for an answer? I asked with a smile. She finally looked up and looked at me. I just want you to stay safe. I don't want you to get hurt, ever. She squeezed my 3 fingers, my pinky, ring finger, and middle finger. She then turned her gaze to our hands. The same strange feeling filled my stomach. I've tried to suppress that feeling, but a part of me wants to hold on of the thought that maybe one day. I started caressing the back of her palm. Her hands were like silk, and I could hold them until the sky fell on us. It was like time had stopped, and I forgot what was going to happen tomorrow. I wanted to stay in this moment, but I knew it wouldn't have been possible. I'm safe. I have an incredible gang that I trust with my life. She would have to fight all of you to get to me, and that would be a battle she would lose, I tried to convince Charlotte. I'll shoot her like she's a bottle on a hay bale, she said with determination. Charlotte Duvall, already talking like a real gunslinger, I laughed. Well, I had a good teacher, she smiled and squeezed my fingers some more. Trust me, she's been gone so long, I don't think she'd get the gold on her own without a gang. And as you know, Lucinda was never the talkative sort, so I don't think she'd get a gang together anyway. It was hard to even get a good morning from her, I said while moving my hand to her shoulder to give her a soothing pat. Come on. We should get back to Elizabeth before she finds something to nag about. Charlotte let out a small but cute laugh and said, I always trust you, but that doesn't mean I don't worry. She started walking back to where we left off. The more I hear about Lucinda, the more I hate her. I laughed and started to follow her. You have no idea how much I hate her. We got back to Elizabeth. She was still drawing. There was still no sign of Clint. As we walked up to the wagon, Elizabeth said, That bastard still hasn't shown up. If I see him again, I'll feed him to the gators up in La Grasse. Are there any gators around here? Charlotte said worryingly, looking around. No, stupid. They're near Saint Denis. There are swamp areas. I'd stay away from them if I were you, country girl, she scoffed. I didn't plan on going there, Charlotte said, sitting down to lean against the wagon. I grabbed my blanket from Sora's saddle and placed it under the wagon, then crawled over to Elizabeth and whispered to her, "You need to stop being mean to Charlotte. She's nervous enough without you being like that." She gave me a deadly look and replied quietly, "That girl wasn't made for this life. You're going to kill her. But okay, I can try to stop." Elizabeth's words cut my heart. How dare she say something like that? I didn't know what to say to that. I crawled out from under the wagon and went to sit next to Charlotte. "If Clint doesn't come by morning, we're going to go Eddie and Cynthia and cancel the whole thing," I said. What? Said Elizabeth and Charlotte at the same time. "After all this, if one asshole doesn't come, you're ready to bury the whole plan?" Elizabeth continued. I looked at the horizon and replied, "I'm not going to risk anyone's life. We can't do it with the three of us because we need 2 inside the bank and 2 outside just in case the plan goes to shit." There's no arguing about it. Neither of them said anything until Charlotte started talking about the animals she had seen along the river. Fortunately, it helped with the awkwardness. We spent rest of the evening talking, mostly Charlotte and me, as Elizabeth didn't really take part in the conversation. She was immersed in drawing most of the time. I didn't want to ask if she would show her drawings just because of what she said about Charlotte earlier. After a while, Elizabeth and Charlotte started to sleep. I went between them just to be sure, but I wasn't able to fall asleep yet, so I listened to the sounds of the nature. It was wonderful to relax by the water. Water flapping is something I've always liked. In New York, we had a fountain in the backyard that I loved to sit around and just watch the water move. During the times when I was grounded in my room, I looked at it from my window and dreamed of freedom. What would be more wonderful than being free like water? Eddie and Cynthia were still awake. They had made a small camp after setting the dynamite in the right places and letting the horses that pulled the wagon free. They first talked about how Grandpa would light the cord, and then they would both go on their own horses to Limpany to meet us. The conversation was going well until Eddie said this. "You know what, child? I never told you, but I feel guilty for not coming back to you and the kids when you needed support." He opened up. It was something he always wanted to talk to her about, but was never brave enough until now, when death is at the door. Cynthia heard Eddie's words of regret, but they passed through her as if they had no meaning to her. Eddie was still looking at Cynthia, but noticing his words had no impact on her. He looked at the ground. Cynthia was just staring off into the distance when a flood of emotion and memories overcame her. "Why did you leave us? Why would you go off and leave your family to fight some war?" Cynthia asked. Eddie looked up at her with a slight shocked expression. "Were you actually trying to fight for something, or were you just looking for an excuse to leave?" Cynthia demanded an answer after all these years. "You know, child, my country needed me," Eddie answered. "Your family needed you," Cynthia said with the pain that she forgot she had. "Fighting for a country you never showed you cared about. You know, when you left, I knew deep down you weren't coming back." Cynthia's words were almost automatic, like she rehearsed them in her mind without knowing it. "Eleanor kept asking after you. She needed her grandfather because her own father didn't give a damn. I tried talking to William, but he chose to not listen." It took everything from Cynthia to not burst into tears when she finally said, "You might be here now, but when it mattered the most, it's already in the past, and you can't make that up." After hearing what Cynthia had to say, Eddie's eyes began to soften, as though he always knew what he did hurt his daughter and granddaughter. It wasn't until he heard them that it truly became a reality, and he started thinking of the memories of his child. Then he was hit by the thought of all the time he missed out by not being there. It was something he couldn't bear. A tear ran down Eddie's face, and Cynthia noticed it. Before Cynthia could say another word, Eddie started speaking first, with a crackle in his voice. I know what I did hurt you very badly. I know this, child. And there's nothing that's going to change what happened. The only thing I can do is be here now, for you and for everyone else. You have my word. I'll make things right this time. I'll die before I let anything happen to Eleanor, I promise you that." Show that to her. And don't just use your words. I'm going to sleep now. We have to be sharp tomorrow. Good night, Pa, Cynthia said and laid down on the blanket to get some sleep. Night turned to morning. The morning was foggy, and there was tension in the air, as if nature knew what was about to happen. I was between being awake and asleep. I finally fully woke up to someone kicking my boot. "Rise and shine," someone said with a man's voice. I quickly took out my gun and aimed at the person while I was still laying down. My vision was blurry and my hand was shaking. "Stop waving that gun of yours. It's me, Clint," he said. Elizabeth and Charlotte woke up to his voice. Elizabeth quickly got out from under the wagon, took her gun and pointed it at Clint. "Give me one good reason not to blow your brains out," she said. Clint didn't even flinch. "Put that gun down, little girl, and get this wagon going. We got a bank to rob." Charlotte started to giggle and looked at Elizabeth. "There, you heard it, little girl." She started walking to feed our horses. Elizabeth gave Charlotte a look and then turned back to Clint and asked, "What took you so long?" "I had to take care of a couple things before I could come. Don't worry about it," he replied. "At least I'm here now." Yeah, Elizabeth said. She took her blanket and went to Luna. Soon she came back, fed and gave water to the horses that were pulling the wagon. Meanwhile, I explained the plan to Clint. He listened intently and asked a few questions to be sure. After some time we were leaving. I jumped on Sora's saddle and went to the side of the road. Waiting for the explosion from the direction of the bridge made me nervous, because I knew that after that we couldn't back down. I was in my thoughts when I suddenly heard Elizabeth. "Hey, Eleanor, can I hop aboard with you?" she asked. "Luna can stay here with Dakota. She's too scared of loud noises." I held out my hand to her and said, "Sure you can. Come on." As she sat down, she whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry about what I said about Charlotte. Frankly, it scares me. She's so inexperienced with all of this. And I know what it's like to live with someone dying because of you." I looked ahead and replied, "If it's up to me, she's not dying. I'll do everything I can to keep her alive." Charlotte sat in the wagon, and Clint climbed up to sit beside her. They came next to us, and Charlotte's gaze pierced my soul. It was a look I had never seen on her face, and I didn't know what it really meant. Then her eyes looked down at Elizabeth's arms that she had wrapped around my waist. Then she looked at me again. I saw the same look on her face. I didn't know how to answer that, so I smiled gently at her. Charlotte smiled back, but I could see her eyes were holding something in. We started to go slowly towards Limpany. "They're on their way," Cynthia said to Eddie. She was hiding behind a bush, ready to hop on her horse, and Grandpa Eddie was behind a rock, ready to push the plunger down. The sheriff and his men went coming closer and closer to the bridge. The wagon with the Gatling gun was up front. Grandpa Eddie pushes the plunger down, and the detonating cord lights up, but it only travels for a while and then suddenly stops. "Oh, that's not good! God damn it!" Grandpa shouts. He slaps his horse on the rear to make it run away. Cynthia peeks out from behind the bush and asks, "What the hell are you doing?" Eddie knows he has to rekindle the spark, or the whole plan will go awry. That would mean he doesn't have enough time to escape because the detonating cord is just too short. He closed his eyes for a second, got up and then ran to the detonating cord. "Go! There ain't no time! You gotta go!" Grandpa tells her as he pulls matches out from his pocket and lights one up by scratching it on the bottom of his shoe. "Are you insane? I'm not leaving you behind," Cynthia insists. "We don't have to do this. We can just write to Eleanor and tell her we have to flee." "God damn it, Cynthia! Knowing her, she'd carry out the job with or without the explosion. There is a fighter in her. Someone who wants a better life no matter what it takes," Eddie says while he lights up the cord. "I always adored her for that. I love you and Eleanor very much." A tear runs down his cheek. "Go! And don't you dare look back," he said. "But Pa!" Cynthia cries. "I said go!" Grandpa ordered. With a heavy heart, Cynthia rides towards Limpany. She doesn't look back, but cries profusely. She not only lost her father, but a piece of herself that she would never get back. The last conversation with the repentance that would accompany the last pull of the soul. A powerful explosion could be heard in the distance. It echoed through the town. This is the point of no return. The plan is in motion. Now we have to wait for Eddie and Cynthia to get here. It shouldn't take them long, so get ready, I said. A few minutes pass, but I'm starting to get nervous. They should have been here in about 5 minutes or less. I can tell it's been longer than that. I then hear Elizabeth say, "Well, maybe they stopped to smell roses," she chuckled. "No, that's not like them to get distracted. Something is not right," I say to Elizabeth firmly. I'm looking in the direction they should be coming from when I hear, "Sometimes plans fall through and people die. Are we doing this or not?" Clint asks coldly. I turn towards Clint with anger in my eyes when Elizabeth says, "I'm sure they're fine. We don't have all day. They can meet us later." "Excuse me," a small voice interjects. It's Charlotte. "Eleanor, you did say you trust them with your life. I'm sure they think the same about you. If they did manage to blow up the bridge, wouldn't they want you to finish the plan? Even if they ran into trouble, from how you have spoken about them, they wouldn't fail you." I realized that whatever has happened, Eddie and Cynthia would get the job done and would do everything possible for the plan to work. The plan goes forward. Let's get this done, I say. The others give me a nod. Elizabeth and I were to go inside the bank. We put bandanas on our faces, and I rode in front of the bank, where I tied Sora to the hitching post. There was no one outside. They must have been hiding from the Pinkertons. Elizabeth went ahead to the bank. She had some dynamite hidden under her coat. When I came inside, Elizabeth had cornered the bank employee, customers, and 2 security guards. She didn't come to waste any time. "You continue from here. I'll go to the basement," Elizabeth said. I started aiming at the group of the people standing in the corner. 2 male security guards, the bank employee, and 4 customers, one of whom was a man and the rest were women. "No use trying to be a hero, or you'll each get a 3rd eye," I told them. Everyone except the guards were terrified. They just had a look on their faces that they wanted to shoot me at any moment. Elizabeth started walking towards the basement stairs. She held her gun up, knowing that the remaining 2 guards were waiting below. They would certainly be ready to shoot. She entered a room that was dimly lit by a few candles. One guard was in front of the vault door. "I knew there was a thief up there," said the guard, who came from the corner and aimed at Elizabeth. "Put your gun down, girl," he continued. Elizabeth was quick as lightning. She holstered her gun and kicked the man in the leg, took his gun and grabbed him. She was now aiming his own gun at this man. "If you don't obey, this guy will die," she said with determination. "Throw your gun in the corner and start planting the dynamite to blow up the door." Meanwhile, Clint had driven the wagon to the front of the bank behind Sora. Charlotte stood by the wagon and looked around with her bandana on her face. She had never been so nervous as she was at that very moment. Her heart was pounding so fast that it felt like it was coming out of her chest. Clint stayed in the wagon and kept lifting his bandana so he could smoke. "Would you like a cigarette, babe? Maybe that will calm you down a bit," he asked. Charlotte looked at him in disgust. "Ew, I don't." "Just screw your own lungs up. I'm not touching that." "Pfft, suit yourself," he said. Some residents of Limpany looked at them curiously from the saloon's windows, and some came out. "That is not the sheriff from Valentine, right?" mumbled one woman to another woman. "No, it doesn't look like it. There should be more men with him if it were," said the woman. "Not only do they have bandanas, but the other one is the female. The lawmen don't keep women around." Back at the basement, Elizabeth was taking control of the situation. "Light it, then we'll go up and then we'll come down, and you can put the gold bars in a smaller box and carry it to the wagon," Elizabeth ordered, and repeated until all the gold is in that goddamn wagon. "You're still going to die, you damn whore," said the man Elizabeth was holding on to. Elizabeth put the barrel of the gun in his mouth. "Did you fucking say something?" The man fell silent immediately. Cold sweat poured from his forehead. The other man lit a wire to which he had attached the wires of 2 dynamites. All 3 of them came upstairs, and that's when it exploded. "Everything okay?" I asked Elizabeth. She just nodded and told the man to go back down, and took the other man with him. Gold. There was a big box of gold bars in the vault. one of which weighed 27.4 pounds. That box would weigh way too much if you tried to carry it as it is. Elizabeth was wise to tell them to put it in a smaller box. If it hadn't been at the back of the vault, she could have used the box that was sitting in the wagon. The sound of the explosion made the other residents of the village come out. Some came from inside the saloon, others from inside the general store.
"What the hell was that?"
asked one older man. "It came from the bank," a woman who was holding her child's hand shouted. "Those two are behind it," and pointed her finger at Charlotte and Clint. Charlotte shakes like a rabbit in front of a grizzly bear. She decides to hide behind the wagon. She begins to hug her legs. The poor girl is completely locked up. Clint jumps off the wagon and pulls his gun from the holster. As he does this, his bandana falls off his face. It makes him panic because people now know what he looks like. He grabs the dynamite from the box, lights it and throws the dynamite towards the saloon. A hole explodes in the saloon wall and pieces of wood are thrown around. Some of the people standing on the porch were injured and some died immediately. I heard an explosion outside. I knew it wasn't Grandpa and Mother because it came from nearby. I looked out of the window and see Charlotte sitting on the ground at the back of the wagon and Clint throwing another dynamite, this time towards the woodwork building. He's gone mad. I turn towards the people standing in the corner and shout Elizabeth's name. "Elizabeth!" She just made her way upstairs with the two men carrying the box. "Take that box to the wagon. It's right in front of the bank," she said to the man. "What's wrong?" "Come look out the window. That bastard's gone insane. He's killing people," I said. "I have to go out." "Oh shit," Elizabeth says, turning to look at the men who were just carrying the box out of the door. Clint immediately shoots them. A box of gold drops to the ground. "Stay in that corner if you want to live," trying to command the hostages. I holstered my gun, then said, "I'm not going to shoot you. We have a bigger problem outside." But it didn't matter, because the next explosion would freak them out. The guards didn't even try to shoot me. They just ran out of the door one by one, and they died in front of it. Clint shot them like they were game. The previously wooden door was now covered in blood. After a moment of explosions, there was silence. I dared to go to the door. I had to jump over the bodies. I saw Charlotte still sitting in the same spot, but now she was crying uncontrollably. I saw the carnage that Clint had done. All the buildings except the general store on the other side, the building on the left, which was a sawdust tavern, and the bank that Elizabeth and I were inside were damaged. There were bodies laying everywhere, even children. The sight was gruesome. I wanted to go to Charlotte and hug her as tight as I could, but I had to stop Clint before he could do any more damage. "What the hell have you done?" I asked while I was walking towards him. "You slaughtered those people! You're out of your fucking mind!" I made it in front of him and gave him a taste of my fist. He wobbles a bit and then realizes that I broke his nose. "You goddamn whore! You broke my nose!" He pointed a gun at me. "Listen, I've been doing this since before you even knew what gold was. I leave no witnesses. An outlaw should know that if anyone sees your face in the middle of a robbery, it's over. Either you kill or be killed. I saved your asses," he said. "You killed children," I said as anger boiled inside me. I felt my heart beat faster and my body began to shake. I wanted to shoot him. "Eleanor, some things just have to be done," Clint said, wiping the blood from his nose on his sleeve. He grabbed the dynamite and turned towards the general store. "Watch this and learn." He lit the dynamite and threw it towards the store as if it were something normal. "No!" I screamed and started to run towards the dynamite. I didn't know what I was thinking. My legs just started moving. I was tired of Clint killing people like their lives didn't matter. And on the top of that, he was killing children. As I was running closer to the dynamite, it exploded. The explosion made a hole in the wall of the general store, and I flew from the impact right through the wall of the sawdust tavern. Cynthia arrives in Limpany in a daze, and is shocked at the sight of the town in ruin. Elizabeth comforts her as to why she's so late. Cynthia explains how her hearse pucked her off when the dynamite blew up the bridge, and as she landed on her head, Elizabeth looks at her with doubt about her story. Elizabeth turns away and raises her gun. All I heard was gun going off, and Elizabeth yelling at Charlotte to get up. At some point, I also heard my mother's voice. She told Charlotte to take Sora. Charlotte, on the other hand, yelled at her that I was dead, shouting insistently that she's dead, she's dead, she's dead, with a heart-wrenching tone of voice. I'm thinking that the gun firing was Elizabeth's gun, and that she let air out of Clint, but I couldn't ask. I couldn't scream for help. My whole body was aching from head to toe. Even breathing hurts. There were pieces of wood on my head, and I felt sharp pain in my legs and right side. Is this how I would finally die, after all this, unsuccessfully? I didn't even get to tell my mother how grateful I was to her for finding me and sticking by my side. I didn't get to tell Grandpa how much I liked hearing his knowledge about life. I didn't get to tell Charlotte that I liked her, or how much I admired Elizabeth's tautness. If God existed, how could he let me die like this? I thought, as tears streamed down my face. I was cold, and my eyes were blurry. After a while, everything went black. I couldn't stay awake anymore.